The city lights blurred into streaks of gold and ruby as Mark drove his old sedan home. It was well past midnight, and the roads were mostly empty, save for a stray taxi or two. Mark, a man in his early 30s with kind eyes and a gentle smile that rarely reached his lips, often found himself alone. He was a quiet soul, content with his books and his routines, but deep down, a quiet ache persisted. He longed for someone special, a partner to share his life with, someone who would understand the unspoken feelings in his heart. He hummed softly to the radio, a forgotten tune from his youth, as he navigated the familiar streets. The thought of his empty apartment didn't bother him as much as the empty space beside him in the car. He'd often imagine what it would be like to have someone there, a hand to hold, a head resting on his shoulder. He wasn't looking for grand adventures or wild escapades, just a simple, honest connection. Someone to share quiet evenings, to laugh with over silly things, and to comfort when life got tough. Tonight, the feeling of loneliness was a little stronger than usual. He sighed, a soft puff of air that misted the cool glass of the window for a fleeting moment. Maybe it was the late hour, or perhaps it was the romantic song playing on the radio. He just wished, with all his heart, that his dream of finding that special someone wasn't just a dream. As he rounded a bend, his headlights cut through the darkness, revealing something unexpected by the side of the road. The unexpected sight made Mark gasp. It wasn't a fallen branch or a discarded piece of trash. It was a person slumped against the guardrail. His heart thumped a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He quickly slowed his car, pulling over to the shoulder. He turned on his hazard lights, bathing the area in an amber glow, then cautiously got out. As he got closer, a wave of shock washed over him. The person was wearing a police uniform. A young man, probably in his mid-20s, lay there, his face pale, his uniform torn. A dark stain bloomed on his side, spreading slowly. Fear mixed with a strong urge to help. "Hey," Mark called out, his voice a little shaky. "Are you okay?" The officer groaned, stirring faintly. His eyes fluttered open, glassy and unfocused, then tried to look at Mark. He looked lost and in pain. Mark knelt beside him, his gaze falling to the growing wetness on the officer's uniform. It was blood, too much of it. "You're hurt," he stated, the obvious truth heavy in the air. "I need to call for help." The officer mumbled something, his voice weak. "No, don't." Mark leaned closer, trying to hear over the rush of his own thoughts. "What did you say?" "Just get me out of here," the officer whispered, his breath shallow. "Please." Mark looked around. The road was deserted. No other cars, no sirens in the distance. He felt a shiver of unease, but the officer's plea was clear. His training from a long-ago first-aid course kicked in. He had to act fast. He gently put a hand on the officer's shoulder. "Okay," Mark said, his voice firm now. "Okay, I'll help you." He saw the name Alex stitched on the uniform above the pocket. With a renewed sense of purpose, Mark carefully helped Alex sit up. The officer winced, a sharp intake of breath, but he tried his best to cooperate. Mark, though not a big man, found a surprising strength in his desire to help. He gently put Alex's arm over his shoulder, supporting most of the younger man's weight. "Easy now," Mark murmured, his voice soft and calming. "Just a little bit at a time." Each step to the car was slow and painful for Alex. Mark felt the warmth of Alex's body against his own, a strange mix of worry and something else he couldn't quite name. It was a feeling of deep connection, as if he had known this person before, as if their paths were always meant to cross. He felt a powerful urge to protect Alex, a feeling that surprised him with its suddenness and strength. Finally, they reached the passenger door. Mark carefully lowered Alex into the seat, making sure not to jostle his injured side. Alex slumped back against the headrest, his breathing still shallow, but a little more even now that he was off the cold ground. Mark quickly went around to the driver's side, his mind racing. He glanced over at Alex, whose eyes were closed, his face still pale under the dim glow of the dashboard lights. The uniform, the badge, the blood, it was all so real, so unexpected. Yet, as he looked at Alex, he couldn't shake the feeling that this moment, this person, was somehow meant for him. It was a strange pull, a silent whisper in his heart that this was more than just a random act of kindness. This was something important. He knew he couldn't take Alex to a hospital without questions being asked, and Alex had clearly not wanted that. Mark decided then and there. He would take Alex to his own home. It was the only place he could think of where Alex would be safe and hidden. The drive to Mark's apartment was a quiet blur. He kept glancing at Alex, checking if he was still breathing, still conscious. Alex remained still, his head resting against the window, his face now even paler in the dim streetlights. Mark pulled into his parking spot, his heart still thumping with a mix of worry and something akin to a thrilling secret. His home was on the second floor, a cozy space filled with books, warm lamplight, and a faint scent of old paper and coffee. It was his sanctuary, a safe haven, and now, he hoped, it would be Alex's too. Getting Alex up the stairs was another challenge. Mark again offered his shoulder, and with slow, careful movements, they made it inside. Mark led Alex straight to his living room couch, which was soft and inviting. He helped Alex lie down, propping pillows under his head and knees. "Stay here," Mark instructed gently. "I'll get my first aid kit." He rushed to the bathroom, pulling out bandages, antiseptic, and clean cloths. When he returned, Alex's eyes were open, watching him with a weary curiosity. "You didn't have to do this," Alex whispered, his voice a little stronger. "Of course I did," Mark replied, his voice firm but kind. He carefully cut away the torn fabric around Alex's wound, revealing a deep, nasty gash on his side. It wasn't bleeding as much now, but it looked painful. Mark worked with steady hands, cleaning the wound gently, his brow furrowed in concentration. He felt Alex flinch a few times, but the officer remained silent, trusting Mark. After cleaning, Mark applied fresh bandages, making sure they were secure. He then fetched a soft blanket and covered Alex. "There," Mark said, a small, tired smile touching his lips. "Now you can rest." The warmth of his home, and Mark's quiet care, seemed to wrap around Alex like a comforting hug. Alex lay on the couch, the soft blanket warm over him, feeling a little less pain and a lot more safe. He looked at Mark, whose kind eyes held a gentle worry. "Thank you," Alex said, his voice clearer now, though still a bit weak. "Really, you saved me." Mark sat in a nearby armchair, a small, tired smile on his face. "Anyone would have done the same," he replied, though he knew it wasn't entirely true. Most people would have called for an ambulance, creating a whole different set of problems for Alex. "No, not everyone," Alex countered, a faint flicker of amusement in his eyes. "You're different." A comfortable silence settled between them for a moment. Then, Alex began to explain what had happened, in hushed tones, about a chase gone wrong, a surprise attack, and how he'd managed to escape but got hurt in the process. Mark listened carefully, his heart going out to the brave young officer. As the first hints of dawn began to paint the sky outside, their conversation slowly shifted. They talked about their lives, their hobbies, and their dreams. Mark discovered that Alex loved old movies, just like him, and had a secret talent for drawing cartoons. Alex learned that Mark spent his weekends volunteering at an animal shelter and dreamed of opening his own little bookstore. A small smile played on Alex's lips when Mark confessed his love for quirky science fiction novels. Mark, in turn, chuckled when Alex mimicked a grumpy old sergeant he knew. Laughter, soft and surprising, filled the quiet living room. It was a shared warmth, a connection sparking between two strangers brought together by a strange, dangerous night. The loneliness Mark had felt earlier that evening seemed to shrink, replaced by a hopeful, growing warmth. As the sun peeked through the blinds, casting soft, golden light into the living room, Mark felt a strange, warm flutter in his chest. It wasn't just the relief that Alex was safe or the satisfaction of helping someone in need. It was something deeper, a spark ignited by their shared laughter and the easy flow of their conversation. This meeting felt different from any other he'd experienced. It wasn't just a chance encounter. It felt like destiny knocking on his door. He looked at Alex, who was now propped up on the pillows, a faint blush on his cheeks from their talk. Alex's eyes, though still a little tired, held a newfound brightness. Mark realized he didn't want this unexpected night to end. Alex still needed rest, and going anywhere else in his injured state wasn't a good idea. "Alex," Mark said, his voice a little softer than usual, "you really shouldn't try to move too much tonight. You're welcome to stay here on the couch. It's comfortable, and you can rest properly." Alex hesitated, a small frown creasing his brow. "I don't want to be a bother, Mark. You've already done so much." "Nonsense," Mark replied, a genuine smile finally gracing his lips. "It's no bother at all. Besides," he added, a playful glint in his eye, "who else am I going to talk about old science fiction movies with at this hour?" Alex let out a soft chuckle, a sound that made Mark's heart flutter even more. "All right, Mark," Alex said, a grateful look in his eyes. "Thank you for everything." Mark simply nodded, a quiet understanding passing between them. He got up to fetch a fresh glass of water and some pain relief for Alex, feeling a hopeful lightness in his step. The night, which had started with loneliness, was turning into something truly special. The morning sun streamed brightly into Mark's living room, warming the space. Mark woke up feeling refreshed, and a quick check showed Alex was still asleep on the couch, looking much more peaceful than he had the night before. When Alex finally stirred and opened his eyes, a clear, bright blue, Mark offered him a cup of coffee and some toast. "How are you feeling?" Mark asked, sitting down across from him. Alex took a slow sip of his coffee. "Much better, thanks to you. My side still aches, but it's not as bad." He looked around the cozy room, a soft smile on his face. "This is really nice, Mark. Thank you for letting me stay." As they ate, Alex began to talk more openly about his work as a police officer. He spoke of the challenges and the rewards, the dangers he faced, and the deep sense of duty he felt. Mark listened intently, fascinated by Alex's stories. He learned that Alex wasn't just a cop. He was someone who truly cared about his community, always trying to make a difference. Then, Alex shared his dreams. He talked about wanting to travel, to see the world beyond the city streets. He spoke of his hope to one day have a quiet life, maybe even a little house with a garden. Mark found himself completely drawn into Alex's world, feeling a strong sense of understanding and closeness. Each word Alex spoke, each shared dream, pulled Mark further into a connection he hadn't known was possible. He felt his heart swell with a feeling he could only describe as pure, happy connection. The air between them felt light and full of unspoken promise. The easy conversation eventually slowed, and a quiet sadness began to settle in the room. Alex sighed, a soft sound of regret. "I really should be going," he said, pushing himself up carefully from the couch. His uniform, though still torn, was dry, and the bandage on his side was holding firm. Mark felt a pang of disappointment. He hadn't realized how much he'd enjoyed Alex's presence, the quiet warmth he brought into his usually solitary home. "Are you sure?" Mark asked, trying to keep his voice light, but a hint of longing crept in. "You can stay longer if you need to." Alex shook his head. "I have to report in, try to explain things without causing too much trouble for you." He paused, looking directly at Mark, his clear blue eyes full of gratitude. "I won't forget what you did, Mark. Not ever." Mark walked him to the door, his heart feeling heavy. Just as Alex was about to step out, he turned back. "Wait," Alex said, a sudden urgency in his voice. He reached for his pocket, pulled out his phone, and handed it to Mark. "Can I get your number? I really want to call you." A rush of warmth flooded Mark's chest, chasing away the sadness. He took Alex's phone, his fingers brushing Alex's for a brief moment that sent a shiver down his arm. He quickly typed in his number. "Please do," Mark said, a genuine smile spreading across his face. Alex smiled back, a bright, hopeful smile that made Mark's heart do a little flip. "I will," Alex promised, his voice sincere. Soon, with a final, grateful nod, Alex stepped out, leaving Mark standing in his doorway, the warmth of Alex's presence lingering in the air. After Alex left, the apartment felt strangely quiet, almost too quiet. Mark stood by the door for a long moment, the faint scent of antiseptic and Alex's subtle cologne still lingering in the air. A mix of feelings swirled inside him. There was hope, bright and shiny, at the thought of Alex calling, of seeing him again. But there was also a tiny knot of worry. Would Alex really call? Was this simply a kind gesture from someone he'd helped? Or was there truly something more, something special between them? He walked back into the living room, looking at the now empty couch. The blanket was still rumpled. A forgotten coffee cup sat on the table. These small things were proof that Alex had been there, that the night wasn't just a dream. Mark picked up the cup, his mind replaying their conversation, their shared laughter. The way Alex's eyes had lit up when he talked about old movies, the sincerity in his voice when he promised to call. Mark had spent so many nights wishing for a connection, for someone to truly see him. And then, out of nowhere, Alex had appeared, quite literally bleeding by the side of the road, and everything had changed. It felt like a story from one of his beloved fantasy books, too magical to be real. He sat down in the armchair, the one Alex had just left, and closed his eyes. Was this the start of something real, something he had only ever dared to dream about? Or was he letting his hopeful heart get carried away? Only time and a phone call would tell. He couldn't help but hope, with every fiber of his being, that it was the beginning of a beautiful new chapter. The hours after Alex left stretched long and slow. Mark tried to focus on his usual tasks, reading a book, tidying up, but his mind kept drifting back to Alex. Every time his phone buzzed, a jolt of anticipation went through him, only to settle into a sigh of disappointment when it was just a text from a friend or an email. He told himself not to get his hopes up, that Alex was a busy cop, probably caught up in his work. But still, the hopeful feeling lingered, a tiny flame refusing to be put out. Then, late that afternoon, as the sun began its descent, his phone chimed with an unfamiliar number. His heart skipped a beat. He looked at the screen, a mix of nerves and excitement bubbling up. He answered, his voice a little breathless. "Hello, Mark? Hey, it's Alex." Alex's voice, warm and a little tired, was like music to Mark's ears. Mark let out a silent sigh of relief he hadn't realized he was holding. "Alex, hi, how are you doing? Is everything okay?" "Yeah, I'm okay. A little sore, but getting there," Alex said. "Listen, I was wondering. I know this is a bit sudden, but would you be free to grab coffee sometime soon? Like maybe tomorrow? I'd really like to properly thank you, and maybe talk more." Mark's heart didn't just flutter. It leaped with joy, doing a joyful little dance in his chest. A wide, genuine smile broke across his face. Yes, I'd love that, Alex. Tomorrow would be perfect." They quickly made plans to meet at a small coffee shop in the city center. As Mark hung up, he couldn't stop smiling. The worry was gone, replaced by pure, unadulterated happiness. Alex had called. This wasn't just a kind gesture. It was a real invitation. And Mark felt, with a certainty that warmed him from the inside out, that this was indeed the beginning of something wonderful. The next day, Mark arrived at the coffee shop a little early, his stomach doing nervous flips. He chose a table by the window, watching the street, until he saw Alex approaching. Alex looked different out of uniform, in a simple t-shirt and jeans, but just as handsome, with a healthy glow back on his face. He still moved a little carefully, a reminder of the night they met. "Hey," Alex said, a warm smile lighting up his face as he reached the table. "Thanks for coming." "Of course," Mark replied, feeling his nerves calm at the sight of Alex's genuine smile. "How's your side feeling today?" "Much better," Alex assured him. "Thanks to your amazing first aid." They ordered their coffees, and soon, the conversation flowed as easily as it had in Mark's living room. They talked about everything and nothing, their favorite books, silly childhood memories, their hopes for the future. Alex told Mark more about his family, and Mark shared stories about his quiet life. Laughter bubbled up often, light and free, drawing curious glances from other coffee shop patrons. Hours melted away like sugar in their warm drinks. Mark found himself completely captivated by Alex's bright blue eyes, his quick wit, and the way he listened with such genuine interest. Alex, in turn, seemed to hang on Mark's every word, his smiles growing wider and more frequent. It became clear, with every shared story, and every knowing glance, how much they truly liked each other. This wasn't just a friendly thank you coffee. It was a wonderful, magical first date, feeling like the start of something truly special. They both knew it. After that first wonderful coffee date, Mark and Alex found themselves drawn to each other more and more. The days turned into weeks, each one filled with new reasons to meet. They went on more dates, simple but special outings that built on their growing connection. They visited the city's old bookstore, where Mark introduced Alex to his favorite authors, and Alex, in turn, found a new love for classic tales. They explored quiet parks, enjoying the peacefulness away from the city's noise, and sometimes just sat on a bench, talking for hours. Alex would often come over to Mark's apartment after his shifts, sometimes still in his uniform, bringing the scent of the city and a cheerful energy into Mark's quiet home. Mark would cook them simple dinners, and they would watch old movies, laughing at the silly lines and sharing popcorn. Alex even helped Mark organize his overflowing bookshelves, their hands brushing, sending tingles through Mark's arm. They shared more than just moments, they shared their lives. Alex told Mark about the tricky cases he was working on, and Mark shared his ideas for his dream bookstore. They talked about their fears, their hopes, and the small, everyday things that made up their worlds. Mark found himself opening up in ways he never had before, trusting Alex with thoughts he'd kept hidden for years. Alex listened with a warmth and understanding that made Mark feel truly seen. Each day, their bond grew stronger, weaving itself into the fabric of their lives. The easy comfort, the shared laughter, the deep conversations, it all felt so natural, as if they had always been meant to find each other. Mark's lonely apartment now felt like a home, filled with the promise of a future with Alex. One evening, as Mark watched Alex laugh at a silly movie on his living room screen, a sudden, powerful realization washed over him. It wasn't just liking or even strong affection. It was more. It was a deep, undeniable feeling that settled in his heart with a comforting warmth. He was falling in love with Alex. The thought, once a distant dream, now felt so real, so immediate. He looked at Alex, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the gentle curve of his lips, the quiet strength that lay beneath his easygoing nature. Everything about Alex, from his serious dedication to his job to his playful love for cartoons, simply fit with Mark. It was as if a missing piece of his own heart had finally been found. A wave of pure happiness, unlike anything he had ever known, swelled within him. This wasn't the fleeting joy of a good book or a sunny day. This was a deep, abiding contentment that came from the very core of his being. He had dreamt of a special someone for so long, wished for a connection that would fill the quiet corners of his life. And now, here was Alex, making those dreams come true, making his world brighter and infinitely more meaningful. Mark felt lighter, happier, and more alive than he had ever been. The loneliness that used to cling to him was completely gone, replaced by a vibrant, hopeful energy. He knew, with a certainty that hummed through his veins, that this happiness, this love, was exactly what he had always longed for. It was a beautiful, tender feeling, a treasure he wanted to hold on to forever. Mark, filled with the overwhelming feeling of love, found the courage one quiet evening to tell Alex how he felt. They were sitting on the couch, the same couch where Alex had rested that first night, sharing a comfortable silence after a long day. Mark took a deep breath. "Alex," he began, his voice a little shaky. I think I'm falling in love with you." Alex turned to him, his blue eyes wide, a soft surprise on his face. For a moment, Mark's heart pounded with fear, wondering if he had said too much too soon. But then, Alex reached out, taking Mark's hand in his own, his touch warm and reassuring. "Mark," Alex said softly, a gentle smile spreading across his face. "I feel the same way, more than the same way. I love you too." A wave of pure relief and happiness washed over Mark, making his eyes well up a little. Alex squeezed his hand, and then, in a quieter voice, added, "You know, before I met you, I felt pretty lonely. Even with my friends and my job, there was always this empty space. I didn't think I'd ever find someone who truly understood me, someone I could share everything with. Mark listened, his heart aching with empathy and swelling with love. He knew exactly what Alex was talking about. Me too, Mark whispered, his voice thick with emotion. I spent so long just wishing for someone like you. Alex leaned closer, his eyes gentle. And then I found you, bleeding by the side of the road, Mark said, a small, wry chuckle escaping him. Alex laughed softly. And I found you, my knight in shining armor, he replied, his gaze warm and full of affection. You came into my life when I really needed you, and you brought so much light with you. The shared feeling, the open honesty, solidified their bond even further. They were no longer just two people who had found each other. They were two souls, once lonely, now beautifully intertwined. After their heartfelt confessions, the air in Mark's living room felt charged with a beautiful, tender energy. Alex, still holding Mark's hand, leaned in closer, his gaze soft and full of unspoken promises. Mark's heart soared, feeling a sense of rightness he had never experienced before. Alex gently cupped Mark's cheek, his thumb brushing lightly over Mark's skin. I'm so glad I found you, Mark, he whispered, his voice husky with emotion. You're everything I never knew I was looking for. Mark leaned into Alex's touch, his own hand coming up to rest on Alex's arm. And you, Alex, he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. You've made my world so much brighter. Slowly, tenderly, Alex closed the small distance between them. Their lips met in a soft, sweet kiss, a kiss that tasted of shared secrets, growing affection, and a future full of hope. It wasn't a rushed kiss, but a gentle joining, a confirmation of all the feelings they had just bravely spoken aloud. In that moment, all doubts vanished, all past loneliness faded away. When they finally pulled apart, their foreheads rested together, their eyes gazing into each other's. A comfortable silence wrapped around them, filled with the warmth of their new love. Mark felt a profound peace, a deep joy that settled into every part of his being. This was it. This was the love he had dreamed about, a love that felt safe, real, and truly his. Alex's hand found Mark's again, their fingers intertwining, a simple gesture that spoke volumes about their confirmed feelings and the beautiful journey they were just beginning. With their hearts full and their feelings confirmed, Mark and Alex spent the rest of the evening talking, but this time, their conversation turned to the future. They snuggled close on the couch, the world outside Mark's apartment fading away as they build a new one with words and dreams. What do you imagine for us? Alex asked, his voice soft against Mark's hair. Mark thought for a moment, a happy sigh escaping him. I see quiet mornings drinking coffee together, maybe reading the newspaper side by side. I see us going to the animal shelter, finding a grumpy old cat who needs a home. He chuckled softly. And your cartoons, of course. I want to see all your new drawings. Alex smiled, his fingers tracing patterns on Mark's arm. I see us traveling like I always wanted, but now with you by my side. Maybe a small house with a big garden, just like I dreamed. And lots of movie nights with way too much popcorn. He paused, then added, but most of all, Mark, I see us always being there for each other. Through everything. A life filled with love and understanding. Mark felt a tear prick his eye, a tear of pure happiness. That's exactly what I want too, Alex. A life where we always feel safe and loved, just like I feel with you right now. They talked about their jobs, how they would make time for each other, and the small, everyday adventures they would share. There were no grand plans, just simple, heartfelt desires for a shared life. Each dream they spoke, each vision of their future, wove their hearts closer together, creating a beautiful tapestry of what was to come. It was a future built on love, respect, and the quiet understanding that had blossomed from a most unexpected night. Months later, Mark and Alex sat in their garden, a happy old cat purring on Alex's lap, just as Mark had once dreamed. The sun warmed their faces, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers. Mark often found his thoughts drifting back to that fateful night on the road. He remembered the blurry streetlights, The fear in his gut when he saw the slumped figure, and the rush of worry when he realized it was Alex, hurt and bleeding. He remembered the desperate plea in Alex's eyes, asking to be taken away, and the strange, strong pull he felt towards the injured officer. It had been a scary night, a dangerous night, but it had also been the most important night of his life. Who would have thought that a moment of crisis, a roadside accident, would lead him to the person he was meant to be with? It felt like a scene from a movie, too perfect to be true. Yet, here they were, building a life together, filled with the very love and understanding they had spoken of. Mark gently took Alex's hand, his fingers intertwining with Alex's. He looked at Alex, who smiled back, his eyes full of warmth and adoration. Mark knew, with a certainty that hummed through his entire being, that every lonely night, every silent wish, every dream he had ever held for a special someone had all led to this. That night, finding a young cop bleeding by the road wasn't just an accident. It was the start of his most wonderful dream coming true. It was the moment his life truly began. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Mark and Alex stayed in their garden, hand in hand. The old cat, Mittens, had moved from Alex's lap to curl up between their feet, a warm, fuzzy presence. Their dreams of quiet mornings, shared travels, and a home filled with love were slowly, beautifully, coming true. Alex leaned his head on Mark's shoulder. "Remember how scared I was that night?" he murmured, a soft memory in his voice. "And how you just appeared, like an angel or a hero from one of your books." Mark chuckled, squeezing Alex's hand. "You were the brave one, Alex. You fought your way out of trouble. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time." "Or the perfect place at the perfect time," Alex corrected, looking up at Mark with sparkling eyes. "It felt like fate, like we were always supposed to find each other, no matter how strange the way we met." Mark nodded, his heart full. He knew it was true. Their journey had begun with a scary, unexpected moment, but it had led them to a happiness he hadn't believed possible. He had found not just a partner, but his best friend, his confidant, his true love. They sat there as the last of the sun's light faded, holding on to each other, feeling completely at peace. The quiet man who once wished for a special someone by the road, and the brave officer who was once lost and bleeding, were now Mark and Alex, happy and deeply in love. They looked forward to all the years ahead, knowing that with each other, every day would be an adventure, and every moment a cherished gift. Their story, born from a dark night, was now a bright, endless future.